Executive Director, Her Internet, to talk about protecting civic space for women and children online. Sandra, good morning.
Good morning to you.
You look lovely today.
Thank you very much.
How was the journey today?
Oh, the traffic is crazy. Yes, it's crazy.
It's pretty much crazy.
It's
now.
Very bad.
Tell us about Her Internet. What do you do? What's the company about?
Okay, so Her Internet is a young women-led organization that advocates for the digital rights and internet freedoms for women, focusing on structurally silenced women in Uganda. Yes.
When you talk about structurally silenced women, who are these?
These are women who are pushed to the edge of the country, let's say, women who are treated like second-class citizens, women who do not conform to the norm, and I use the norm in very delicate terms.
Yes.
I'm talking about women, communities of women like, well, sex workers, queer women, women with disabilities, youth, women in rural areas, women who don't have immediate access to the internet, and you know, the kind of conversations happening in the center of the thing.
Why is internet quite important in this day and age?
Well, the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, just brought to light the fact that the internet is a crucial lifeline. And without it, everything stops. Businesses stop, communication stops, moving money is difficult, getting healthcare is difficult, access to information, and therefore it's just really, it's just a very important and critical part of life now. We can't exist in a world without
because everything, finance, transport, business, all runs through the internet. Now, what is this civic space situation in Uganda in relation to feminist organization, both online and offline?
The civic space is shrinking. It has been shrinking for a while, and it's continuously shrinking. Day by day, there are several factors that, you know, contribute to this. These factors could either be state actors, non-actors related, non-state actors related. Feminist organizing, on the other hand, is obviously growing because feminist organizing is around innovating in ways that haven't been there before. There is no template for feminist organizing. So as the civic space shrinks, feminist organizing grows. According to a research study conducted by Women of Uganda Network with support from the Association for Progressive Communications, APC, of which Her Internet is also a partner, some of the reasons and ways, let's say tactics, of shrinking civic space, especially by state actors, include internet shutdown. It's a way of, you know, controlling how civic space engages. But also there is mass surveillance, and mass surveillance on the work that organizations do, especially NGOs. We know the state of NGOs in the country. Then the usual, you know, arbitrary arrests, being detained in court with no fair hearing, and so on and so forth. So really, the state of civic space in Uganda is just continuously shrinking. If I may give an example, the governor of the Bank of Uganda, may his soul rest in peace, the former governor, mandated banks to relay the sources of funding for NGOs after ACFOD, I've forgotten it in full, but ACFOD released a statement on land rights and stuff. So as a pushback, the state also decided to, you know, touch on the source of finances that keep the organizations running. So it's just an example of how, you know, it might affect one organization directly, but it affects everyone else because we are then all intimidated because we are worried about what's going to happen. And obviously without funding, there is little you can do as an organization, as an entity. You know? So it's really, it's bad. So
what's the take from the feminists movement point of view on the civic space? How do we go forward?
So like I mentioned, that feminist organizing is innovative. It's about doing things that have not been done before in very repressive spaces. So feminists are organizing in collaboration like I mentioned, structurally silenced women find it hard to organize and push back on our own, you know. It's very hard. We need to do it in collaboration with mainstream women organizations, women human rights defenders, just really collaborate across borders, across activisms, across class, across ages and all that.
Yeah. Now, you've mentioned, you gave an example of how the banks, how the government pushed back on NGOs. Is the legal environment in Uganda conducive for feminist organizing, and particularly for the structurally silenced women, as you talked about earlier on?
No, the legal environment is not conducive at all.
Yeah.
An example of certain laws, let's say, the Sexual Offences Bill, the Anti-Pornography Act, even Section 145 of the Penal Code Act. They all may seem to speak different languages, but essentially they are criminalizing women who do not conform to heteronormativity. And that's very dangerous because the law by design has excluded an entire group of women who are not effectively engaging in the socio-economic, the political, but also community spaces. Yeah. So it just creates, a gap that is not being filled by anyone, you know. If I'm to give an example again,
yeah, examples are good.
Based on the legal situation, a few years back, a human rights defenders workshop was raided by law enforcement, and the participants, the hotel guests, the hotel staff were, you know, terrorized for several hours as the law enforcement tried to identify and, you know, detain participants and figure out what they were doing. But it's a human rights defenders skills building workshop, really. There shouldn't be any reason why human rights defenders who are getting skills and capacity, a workshop like that should be raided. But again, it goes back to the tactics that were mentioned in the research around intimidation, you know. Intimidating tactics like those give an example to the others to, you know, don't speak too loud, don't do this, don't do this. So it's really, the legal environment is not conducive at all, at all. And of course, there is several laws, for example, the Public Order Management Act that, you know, was brought for several reasons, also infringed upon the rights of assembly, you know, for civil society organizations, because we have to ask for permission and so on and so forth. Sometimes you have to talk about why you're convening, the names of people who are going to be convening, which all goes back to infringing on the rights of privacy, but also the dignity of, you know, human beings, just generally.
Why do you think you pose a threat?
I don't know.
I
don't know.
That is a question to ask yourself, because if you say government is pushing back, or the legal environment is basically pushing back on you, why do you think they feel threatened?
I don't think they feel threatened. It's more of there's identities that apparently Ugandan social and cultural norms do not agree with, or let's say conform with. And so it's really hard to exist in a space whereby a whole identity of yours is erased. And government may not be threatened per se, but it's just because there's so much advocacy work going on. And
against you?
No. We are doing a lot of advocacy work, and the government is listening and hearing. But as they listen and hear, they're not ready for change. And so this is also trickling down to online spaces, whereby we see a few, I think it was last year but one, where several young girls and women came up to speak out against alleged sexual offenders. And some of these women were actually arrested and detained, but the perpetrators were never looked into, never. Not even investigated for 1 second to just say, wait, let's see what these girls are saying. Is it right? So you see, the way that kind of that kind of environment that even trickles to infringing on the freedom of speech online is just really detrimental to, you know, organizing, mobilizing as organizations and civil society, just, you know, finding our voices of and agency to speak out about our challenges, our issues, but also to share information. Because I'm sure if we had a conversation beyond this, there's something I would say that you wouldn't have maybe probably, you know, heard of, and I also learned a thing or two from you. So when people are censored or when they self-censor, especially online, it also impedes the advocacy efforts and advocacy work that has been done around the different issues, especially around things like violence against women, things like, you know, land rights, things like sexual, reproductive and health rights, access to justice, and so on and so forth. It's a whole snowball. As much as the law is infringing on one or two rights, you know, rights to assembly, the freedom of association, freedom of press, and so on, it just goes back to, you know, the whole right to life. When the Constitution says that it protects the dignity of every Ugandan citizen and the right to life of every Ugandan citizen, it should also include all those rights because they impede on someone's life, you know?
As you fight for the right not to be censored online, how do you fact check what people put out there? Because so many times the government has come out and said there is fake news being posted online, there is misdirection that goes on online. How do you make sure that the right information is put online and the right discussions happen there?
The right information exists online if you know where to look. When I say if you know where to look, it's because we live in an era where there is a lot of information overload. And so because of information overload, we are misinformed because then everyone picks and chooses what they want to, you know, retain. It's subjective again because we all perceive things differently, you know, interpret things differently and so on. So the fake news, if I come out and say this is fake news, then ideally I should be able to give you the truth, you know, to counter the fake news. But government doesn't do that. They call out the fake news, but then don't inform us adequately. Or, okay, well, they just disinform because sometimes there is information withheld, sometimes it's not shared, sometimes it's just not there, there is no data, there is no research, and so on and so forth. So it's a whole host of things around misinformation and disinformation, but all because of information overload, because the internet inherently is, we are the internet. You contribute to the internet, I contribute to the internet, and then we consume what we contribute to the internet because it is a public platform, you know. So inherently it's really around information overload, but if someone says something is fake news or misinformation, ideally you should come and counter that with the truth or, you know, your version of the truth or something. So when someone calls out an alleged offender online, instead of arresting the person who has called them out, investigate. Find out what's going on. Does this have truth? Does it not have truth? Instead of shutting it all down before you even investigate. I think that's what should be done. Fact
is, Sandra, that there are people who misuse the internet. How or what are you doing as Her Internet to create awareness and teach the women on how to use the internet the right way? Are you doing anything as a company?
Yes. So Her Internet has several advocacy projects, but the most notable that I can talk about is that every Thursday we have something called Tech Thursdays on all our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, where we share tidbits of things around tech, around the internet, how to use it, traps not to fall into, but we also offer, you know, digital security and literacy services for women so that they are tech savvy but also are able to optimally maximize the use of the internet. But again, like I mentioned, it's all a work of collaboration. So as much as I'm here talking to you and I'm from Her Internet, so much of that has been done up until this point and where I'm seated now has been a work of collaboration of so many entities, so many society organizations, so many individuals who are working at individual level, but also support from several organizations. Again, like I mentioned, this, part of this project has been done in collaboration with Men of Uganda Network, with support from the APC, Association for Progressive Communications, under the Our Voices, Our Futures program. So high internet alone can't do the work. It needs to be in collaboration with the media, media. So I'm glad that NTV offers this platform. Do you know how people just talk about things that they wouldn't normally hear about on mainstream media? So we are all contributing now to that effort.
Yes, we are. Yes. Well, we are just out of lockdown. Has COVID-19 generally contributed to the shrinking civic space? And what are some of the cases that you have observed as her internet?
Very many cases. So to start with...
What a sigh.
Because COVID-19 has appended so many things, things that we thought we knew, things that we thought we had gotten a grasp of, have all just, you know, become worthless or become second, you know, related to the backseat and all. But starting with the internet shutdown towards general elections, it really affected the mental and physical health of so many communities of women, and structurally silenced women in particular, because maintaining our online networks was the only way we could, you know, have a sense of normalcy in all this raging pandemic that was bringing the world to its knees.
True.
And so taking away those networks just meant that all our efforts to organize, to mobilize people, to just keep in touch, you know, to have to organize safe spaces were taken away. That whole chance was taken away for close to 2 weeks plus, you know. So COVID-19 in a way exacerbated that, because then it also meant that people are dealing with other public health issues, but also dealing with, you know, people went back home to abusive families, people had to leave their jobs because, of course, the economy was doing bad and so on. So all those things just add up to making life difficult for an already difficult situation for a woman, you know. People couldn't access HIV medication, for example, and we saw very many pregnant women who died en route to hospitals because probably an RDC or the LC couldn't sign the pass slip, the, you know, the get pass on time. I said pass slip and I remembered when we were back in school. So sorry about
school times.
Yeah, but in addition also, well, I don't say the government, but the regulations around COVID-19, you know, curfew, social distancing, quarantining, some of them were abused and misused to round up people in, you know, arbitrary arrests under the guise of they are flaunting the regulations of COVID-19, you know. But we know very well that some of these were alive. For example, in Nansana, there's a group of young people who were rounded up and paraded in front of the media, you know, and then these clips were posted online, I'm assuming by law enforcement, because they were the ones who were arresting the people and who called the media and so on. So these young people were arrested on grounds of flaunting COVID-19 rules. But when it got to court, the story changed. And I won't go into detail, but we know this is how the state does its things. They use one thing to mean another. And eventually, people were released with no charges against them, but they had been detained for more than days on end with no fair hearing. So COVID-19 has made things worse for sure, because we all had to be in a state of emergency. And so that state of emergency, again, is subjective, because my state of emergency could be lack of food. Your state could be getting to work, you know, because you have to find means to get to work.
True.
So it just made things worse all round for already difficult situations of structurally silenced women.
Well, Sandra, what are some of the practical strategies that need to be implemented to ensure that the civic space is favorable for all women, particularly the women human rights defenders?
Again, as much as civic space is shrinking, digital transformation has birthed new online platforms and spaces where we can do mass mobilization, where we can do greater advocacy, where we can do more of the, information dissemination and so on, that we can, reach out to more people than ever before across borders. We can organize across borders for the first time in so long. We can organize, without even having to jump on a plane, because again, COVID-19 showed us that these things are not important anymore, So what we can do is, as structurally silenced women and communities of people whereby it is so hard to organize in physical spaces, we can take advantage of these online platforms, because on online platforms you have the room and the space to organize how you want. Again, feminist organizing is about innovating, and technology is innovative. So we can use them both to innovate something that has not been done before, something that hasn't been there before, it hasn't been seen before, to create change. But also, like I mentioned earlier, collaboration is very important. It is very, very important. The Anti-Homosexuality Act was not nullified out of the blue. It was an effort of collaboration of so many civil society organizations that said, you know what, we're not going to let particular groups of people be continuously violated in this country and we do nothing about it. So again, collaboration goes a long way. Then there is obviously a need for further advocacy for equality and non-discrimination, across the board. But then it is also important that we increase the digital security capacity for women, as well as digital literacy, because it goes a long way in enabling people optimally utilize online platforms for whatever their goals and objectives. Yeah. All
right, Sandra, thank you so much for coming through and having this important conversation.
Thank you so much.
It's what we do here at Morning and NTV. And well, if you want to catch up with what we've been discussing, you can go to our YouTube channel, that is NTV Uganda, and look out for this interview. And well, again, share your opinions on our social media platforms, that is Facebook, Twitter, look out for NTV Uganda, or myself, Idris Matusegawa. Now we shall take a short break. We're coming back with more on Morning at NTV.